news tonight, the UNHCR gears up for an exodus of up to 50,000 Iraqis escaping Daesh-held territories amid reports of stepped-up executions and starvation in Fallujah. Aid agencies in Greece say conditions at newly established official camps are not good and express concern about the new state-run camps for migrants. And the US President makes a historic visit to Hiroshima Peace Memorial Park in Japan, the site of the world's first atomic bombing. Good evening and welcome to the news at 10. Senate President Faisal Al-Fayez held a series of meetings with Russian officials on ways to bolster ties in various fields. Al-Fayez is in Russia upon an official invitation from Russian Federation Council Speaker Valentino Matvienko. During his meetings in St. Petersburg, Al-Fayez praised the depth of ties between the two countries while stressing the need for more joint cooperation in areas of common interest. The meetings also touched on the latest developments in the Middle East, the foremost of which were the Syrian crisis and Palestinian issue. United Nations Refugee Agency UNHCR announced that more than 4,200 Iraqis from Mosul fled to Syria in May, adding it is gearing up for up to 50,000 people to leave the Daesh-held city and cross the border. Driving the exodus appeared to be reports that the terrorists have stepped up executions of men and boys in Fallujah since Iraqi government forces launched an offensive to retake the city, where people are reportedly also dying of starvation. The Iraqi army launched an offensive on Monday to dislodge the terrorists from Fallujah, 50 kilometers west of Baghdad.
Ongoing military operations. In Fallujah, we have dramatic reports of the increase of the number of executions of men and older boys refusing to fight on behalf of ISIL. Other reports say a number of people attempting to depart have been executed or whipped. One man's leg was amputated, reportedly. In addition, many people have reported to have been killed or buried alive under the rubble of their homes in the course of ongoing military operations.
Meanwhile, a message from Iraq's top Shiite cleric urging Iraqi forces battling to retake Fallujah from Daesh to spare civilians trapped in the city was delivered by his aide during Friday prayers in Karbala. Grand Ayatollah Ali al-Sistani's appeal reflected concerns that a large civilian death toll in the battle for the mainly Sunni Muslim city could kindle increased sectarian strife in Iraq. Sistani added his voice to the many calls for restraint in the battle launched on Monday to recapture Fallujah, the first Iraqi city to fall under the control of Daesh in January 2014. In Syria, a mature video claimed to show government airstrikes in Hayyan, northwest of Aleppo. More videos show the aftermath of airstrikes in the nearby town of Haritan, with responders scrambling to help wounded people. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights said that the Syrian government has been conducting airstrikes on the various areas around Aleppo countryside. The city of Aleppo, 50 kilometers south of the Turkish border, is divided between the government and rebels fighting to topple Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. A truce was brokered by the United States and Russia in February, but the agreement has since unraveled, with fighting and bombardment in Aleppo playing a big part in its collapse. Workers cleared out tents, garbage and debris from the railway lines and the fields of Idomeni in Greece 1 day after the evacuation of some 8,000 migrants. The Greek government's efforts to move migrants to state-run camps in the country's wider northern region was met with reluctance by many who appeared hesitant to leave the Greek-Macedonian border. Aid agencies said conditions at the newly established official camps were not good and expressed concern about the new state-run camps.
Conditions of some of the sites that refugees and migrants were transferred to fall well below minimum standards. They have been moved into derelict warehouses and factories, inside of which, and I think many of you have seen the photos, tents have been placed too tightly together. The air circulation is poor, supplies of food, water, toilet showers and electricity are insufficient.
Israel's centrist environment minister announced he was resigning in protest at the inclusion of ultra-nationalist Avigdor Lieberman in coalition government. The resignation is the second such cabinet walkout in a week. His announcement comes days after the former defense minister Moshe Ya'alon of Netanyahu's conservative Likud party stepped down in a protest at his portfolio being offered to Lieberman. British Prime Minister David Cameron warned that important trade deals would be difficult to reach if Britain was outside the European Union, as the Group of Seven summit came to an end in Japan. Other leaders at the two-day annual summit also said in a declaration that a British exit from the European Union would be a serious risk to global economic growth. Britain will hold a national vote on June 23rd on whether or not to leave the bloc. Thousands of people surrounded Hiroshima Peace Memorial Park to witness the historic moment when Barack Obama became the first incumbent U.S. president to visit the site of the world's first atomic bombing. Obama set out a vision of a world without nuclear weapons in his landmark speech in Prague in 2009, 3 months into his presidency, which earned him the Nobel Peace Prize. Here's more.
Hiroshima is the site of the world's first atomic bombing in 1945. Barack Obama has become the first sitting U.S. president to visit. More than 140,000 people were killed after the bomb was dropped by the Americans during World War II. Laying a wreath here is a symbolic gesture and a show of alliance between Tokyo and Washington.
We come to ponder a terrible force unleashed in a not-so-distant past. We come to mourn the dead.
Obama hopes his visit will draw attention to the issue of nuclear disarmament.
Mere words cannot give voice to such suffering. But we have a shared responsibility to look directly into the eye of history and ask what we must do differently to curb such suffering again.
But there was no apology for the attack. 3 days after Hiroshima, another one was dropped on Nagasaki, and Japan surrendered 6 days later. Whether or not the atomic bombs were necessary is a contentious issue. Many Americans think they were in order to end the war and save lives, but many Japanese believe they were unjustified.
Democratic presidential candidate Bernie Sanders told a crowd of supporters in Pomona, California, that he challenged Republican nominee Donald Trump to a debate. Trump and Sanders explored staging an unconventional U.S. presidential debate that would sideline Democratic front-runner Hillary Clinton and create a television spectacle that could attract huge ratings. The two men expressed interest in a one-on-one encounter in California, even though Republican and Democratic presidential candidates traditionally do not debate each other until the parties have selected their nominees.
But in any case, I'll give you a little bit of action news. Last night, we challenged Donald Trump, our very, very good friend. I know you all love him as much as I do. But in any case, we challenged him to a debate. And we will see if he stays with it, but at this point he is prepared to debate, and I'm very excited about that.
Tornado ripped through Kansas in the USA, badly damaging and destroying about 20 houses, and more dangerous weather is expected. A video showed a giant tornado tearing through farmland along a highway, and intense storms are possible with large hail and damaging winds. 14 tornadoes sightings were reported in the area so far, where storms destroyed structures, snapped power lines, and damaged rail track.
Getting bigger by the second, northwest of Solomon, Kansas.
A painting by Pablo Picasso, considered to be one of his greatest Cubist portraits, was previewed in Hong Kong ahead of its London auction in June by Sotheby's. Sotheby's art experts said Femme Assise was the most important Cubist work to come into the market in decade, to fetch over $43 million, and is considered one of the Picasso's most valuable contribution to modern art. It comes from a series of canvases believed to have revolutionized Picasso's working methods and established his path to Cubism.
Painted by Picasso in the summer of 1909, at the very moment when he was developing this groundbreaking moment in the history of Western modern art, and that is Cubism. Now, we haven't seen a great Cubist masterpiece on the market for decades, so this is a very exciting moment. And the importance of that, why Cubism is important, is because it is actually something that Picasso and Georges Braque developed. It underpins Picasso's entire creative output.
The Sydney Opera House was among a number of city landmarks illuminated in colours as the annual Vivid Sydney Festival opened today. The iconic Opera House featured work by 6 Australian artists lighting up the sills in a display called Songlines, inspired by Aboriginal Dreamtime stories. Over 150 artists from 23 countries united to create the light show, which includes a colourful paint canvas projections on the museum. Customs House was creation of fantasy storybook characters with lizards and dragons flying across the facade of the building, captivating onlookers. The 8th edition of Vivid Sydney runs until June 18. The two La Liga sides Real Madrid and Atletico Madrid will meet in Milan tomorrow in a rematch of the 2014 final, which Real Madrid won 4-1 after extra time. Real Madrid squad arrived at their Milan hotel in an attempt to win a record 11th European Cup when they faced Atletico. Ronaldo set alarm bells ringing on Tuesday when he ended training prematurely with a knock, but was fit to train again the following day. Atletico Madrid forward Fernando Torres has called tomorrow's Champions League final the game of his life as he yearns for a first trophy with his boyhood club. Manchester United confirmed the appointment of Jose Mourinho as manager on a 3-year contract with an option to stay on until at least 2020. The 53-year-old Portuguese replaces Dutchman Louis van Gaal, whose 2-year reign ended and was sacked 2 days after United won the FA Cup. In 2 spells at Chelsea, the Portuguese won the Premier League 3 times, including their first league title for 50 years and both the FA Cup and League Cup. He also won league championships in his first seasons at Porto and Inter Milan before helping Real Madrid to their first La Liga crown in 4 years. And finally, cool tonight across the kingdom with northwesterly moderate to brisk winds. Tomorrow, conditions remain with their seasonal average, therefore it will be fair in most parts of the country and moderate in the Jordan Valley. Winds will be westerly moderate, stirring dust in the desert areas. The Gulf of Aqaba should expect a hot day Saturday with northerly moderate winds and choppy seas. Next are the lows and highs for tonight and tomorrow. And in the news, our top stories once again. The UNHCR gears up for an exodus of up to 50,000 Iraqis escaping Daesh-held territories amid reports of stepped-up executions and starvation in Fallujah. Aid agencies in Greece say conditions at newly established official camps are not good and express concern about the new state-run camps for migrants. And the US President makes a historic visit to Hiroshima Peace Memorial Park in Japan, the site of the world's first atomic bombing. And with that, we come to the end of tonight's news. I'm Lawal Balkar. Thank you for joining us and have a good night.